Hi, I'm Lynn, and welcome to my backyard. In my backyard, I'm building an AquaPond. That's the integration between a fish pond and an aquaponics system. In the pond video, I talked about the basics of a pond. In the aquaponics video, I talked about the basics of the components of an aquaponics system. Those two work a little bit differently from one another. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the issues that I saw and how I actually am planning on designing the system so that the two work together. The first question is, why put them together at all? I wanted a pond in the backyard. I wanted to hear the water from a waterfall, be able to see fish. Thought it would make the yard look a lot nicer. And I want to be able to eat vegetables. Why have a pond unless you're utilizing the aquaponics portion of it, cleaning the water for the fish and eating delicious vegetables? But I realized that these two troughs, they're not big enough to clean all the water for the fish. They're not. So I'll need an extra component in order to actually finish cleaning the water for the fish. And then that's when I thought, well, why don't I also add a bog to the system? The bog acts more like a backup in order to handle any overflow from the two horse troughs. So I was thinking, how can I get both the aquaponics portion and an active bog? I rolled through a couple of scenarios. I could have the water from the aquaponics tanks dump into another holding tank. I still have the 100-gallon holding tank that I could use, and it would act like a sump. In aquaponics, sumps are used to hold water, and then they're pumped out of the sump into the next portion of the system. But if I do that, I'll have to have more electricity, I'll have to have another pump, and then I have to have more calculations. How would this going to work? How will I know exactly how much water is going into the sump and how much water is going out? It just began to keep me up at night. And that's something else to hide on the back side of the system. And if the water doesn't move well, that's an opportunity for the water to become stagnant or for there to be mosquitoes breeding in that water. It just on and on and on. So I decided, just let it be a passive bog trench. One way to address water that might be not reaching the roots of the aquatic plants is to maybe use some sort of filter or grate that would be at the bottom under the peat rock, which will allow more water flow, pulling water down. If I can find something like that, I'll implement it. If I can't, I'll just go ahead and use the peat rock for now. Issue number 2, the height of the system. Because I'm using these horse troughs, I need them to be high enough so that the water dumping out is not obstructed by anything else. So, for example, the exit pipes, the fittings, the tubing, all of that needs to be clear of any peat gravel, any hydroton, any plant leaves or roots, or there can be no obstructions. If there are obstructions, this could interrupt the natural flow of the water that gets pulled out of the bell siphon. For every brick or cinder block or platform that you add to the system so that the aquaponics portion is high enough to be clear of obstructions, you have to think about how to camouflage this. I don't want the side of the tanks to look like black plastic siding of tanks. I want it to look natural and be hidden by rocks. So the higher these two tanks go, the more mountainous rocks I'm going to have to add to the side of the system. I'll need more stones to cover the sides of the tank the higher the tanks go. Issue number 3. The height of the waterfall. The rock that will serve as the platform for which the water will fall over, that needs to be up above the ground a little bit. There will be a mound of dirt all the way around the pool. That ensures that the water does not overflow out of the pool in a light rain, or that rainwater in the yard doesn't just pour into the pond, taking dirt and debris with it. Those inches have to be calculated in as well. For every inch that I'm adding in height inside the trough, the walls have to be higher in order to make sure that the plastic lining that goes inside that will hold the water will be a sufficient height. So for every inch that I add to the foundation adds to the inch of the height of this, what you see now as the cinder block wall. Issue number 4. I had to calculate approximately how wide and how long the horse trough needed to be in order to make sure that if both aquaponic tubs empty at the same time, I'm having anywhere from 20 to 40 gallons of water emptying out each individual trough. So I could have 80 tons of water entering the trough. I had to calculate to make sure the length and the width and the depth could hold that many gallons of water at a time. Once the system's up and running, I can't really just set it to fill up and empty exactly. I can play with that a little bit with those fittings that are inside the siphon, but it's not exact. It's not like I can just turn a dial and get it to be exactly the speed I want and exactly the timing that I want. It's a rough science. You can get close, but maybe not so exact. So there may be a point in time when both troughs are emptying at the same time. But as I add to the length and or width to the bog trench, that's more area that I'm going to have to camouflage and make it look natural. One way may be to use this waterfall. Another way is to actually use the aquatic plants. As those plants grow, they'll be able to hide the black plastic of the trough, camouflage that area, and look beautiful. Issue number 5. The distance between the actual bog trench and the pond, I may have to separate those a little bit more because I'll need space in between to actually bank up the rocks so that it looks natural. Issue number 6. The opening where the waterfall goes. Because I'm not actually a landscape designer or a pond designer, I'm having to figure this out as I go. But I finally thought, okay, how can I adjust the rate of flow that the water's coming out? And I can't have just a normal opening that you normally see in a waterfall. That's called a spillover. In a spillover, you always have the exact same height of water coming out. But in this design, the water's going to rise and fall anywhere from 20 to 80 gallons at a time. So I'm going to have to space rocks so that it slowly releases the water, but still allows it to go over the waterfall. I'll use a long, flat, thick brick here in order to do that. I can use smaller round rocks to control the rate of flow of the water falling out of the waterfall. This will be just a little bit of trial and error, playing with it for a while until it works well. Issue number 7. How am I going to supply the water via the pump to 2 separate tanks? I'm being kind of cheap. I don't want to buy 2 pumps. I think I can do it with just 1 pump. How? By using a T. The system that I had sitting on my patio, I used this. I made a T by using PVC pipe, but I'll have to cut it down and reshape it so that it fits into the new system. I have a few decorative ideas, but if I need them, I'll show that idea to you at that time. But basically using pots with holes drilled in them so that you don't actually see all the tubing and piping and PVC. That'll be hidden behind the beauty of a nice planter. Issue number 8. I've been thinking about overflow. What happens if there's overflow? One way is to use that T to be more like a triplex so that there's one faucet going to one tank, one faucet going to the second tank, and a third output that will allow any additional extra water to just flow back into the bog trench. Issue number 9. Because I'm using an aquaponics system, there are inconsistent plantings. I mean, vegetables don't grow all year round. There's some that grow in the spring, some that grow in the summer, some that grow in the fall. Very few, if any, that grow in the dead of winter, except potatoes, and I won't be using this system for potatoes. But when one season dies out and there's not a lot growing, what do I do about that? Because the water from the pond still needs to be cleaned. Well, thank goodness I can rely on the bog during that time. Issue number 10. Calculations. How do I calculate the size that's needed? And how do I calculate the flow rates? And how do I calculate the size of the pump that I'll need? And how do I calculate the measuring? And how do I calculate the size of the bog? Well, I don't want to make this video too long, so I'll do a separate video simply on the calculations and show you a tip of how I use to figure out the volume of the water. I hope you enjoyed this video. It has been on the issues related to tying an aquaponics system with a fish pond that uses a bog. If you'd like to see the video on the basics of a pond, please look for that video, or the basics on aquaponics, please look for that video. Hit like, subscribe, and the bell to get notifications and see the progress as I continue to build out the AquaPond. Thank you for watching.